Right. But it was Ed who got my attention first. I mean, there I was. I was working at the registrar's office of Columbia University. I was a transcript clerk. Now, what was I doing there at age 19? Well, I had basically been kicked out of college for a full frontal embrace in the dorm room, and I also didn't finish my papers. And I was virtually unemployable, but I needed to do something. And so my enterprising parents got me a job through my old nanny who had risen in the world, and she was now working at Columbia University. So that's how I got this job. And into the registrar's office came two young men who were army buddies. And they were now out of the army and they were going to make their fame and fortune in the Big Apple, which you don't make at the registrar's office of Columbia University. But there they were. And there I was, because this was in the late 50s. You remember Burn Your Bra? I had burned it, and I was wearing a low-cut peasant blouse. And one of the things I had to do a lot was make Xerox copies of the transcripts. And so every time I leaned over the Xerox machine, they must have gotten an eyeful. So there we were, these two young men. And what was it about Ed that attracted me? Well, he was so different from me. He was kind of exotic. He was from the South, and he had bedroom eyes and he had a slow drawl. And, I didn't know who he was, but somehow the pheromones started to pop between us because that's what happens at 19. However, after work, Ed and John and I would go to the West End Bar and Grill, where we'd sit in these high-backed red booths, and I would sit next to Ed. Oh, but Ed was maybe shy. I don't know what. He did not have much to say. I did not hear that drawl very often. However, across from me was this lanky, witty, surprising, big-boned Midwesterner, and we had these combative conversations. They were full of all kinds of stuff I didn't know he had inside him. And so this was the pattern. Oh, with Ed and with John. And you know what happened? Ed, well, he decamped. Why? Because he turned out he had a fiancée back in Lynchburg, Virginia. But also, I think he got cold feet. I mean, here was this wild, braless, Jewish young woman. And so there, John and I were left together. And it was kind of like with you have a three-legged stool and you take out one leg, and in order for the thing to stand up, you have to lean together. And when we leaned together, the pheromones started to pop. Now, I need to tell you that if you're going to have a relationship that's really important, it's really great to get to know that person before the scrim of limerence, first love sweeps over you. Because I knew then who I was getting, all aspects of this man, John. And, we actually started living together, which you did not do back in the late 50s. And we tried to cover it up, but it was so obvious, even though we came in opposite sides of the registrar's office. And I had to pass the desk of my old nanny many times a day. And she would mutter, "When are you going to get married? You should get married. It's time to get married." Her name was Amelie Sullivan. You can hear she's from Germany. She married the Irish postman, but she was very determined. And so there, John and I were sitting above the Hudson River on the Palisades. Isn't that a great word? And uh, I looked at him and I said, Amelie says we should get married. You want to get married? And he said, it never even occurred to me. Do you want to get married? And out of my mouth came, yes. It really surprised me. And at that very moment, my heart leapt out of my chest and fell down into the Hudson River and bounced back up and lodged back in my chest. And what was that all about? It was because I was only 19 years old. And yes, I had been sexually adventuresome, But there were so many men out there I hadn't even met. And there's this guy, John. And if we were going to get married, I would be pledging my troth. But I said yes. And we did. And we did get married. And we had 35 fascinating, incredible, complicated years together. But I called it kind of the sleepover that would never stop until, indeed, death did us part. So there we were, 35 years later. I was in the ICU. I had my hands on his torso, and I felt under my fingers a leap, and I knew that was John's soul, just leaving his body, signaling me that he was gone. And at that moment, this heart leapt out of my chest and went out into the cosmos. And I felt huge and tiny all at the same time. And then my heart came back and lodged back into my chest. And that's when I knew that John had given me an extraordinary gift, a chance to get to know myself as an independent woman. Thank you.